The cry in the shadows. The marketplace was full of noise. Aliens shouted, bargained, and sold strange things from many worlds. Lights flashed, machines buzzed. But in the corner, no one noticed the alien woman sitting on the cold metal floor. Her clothes were torn, and her body shook with fear. She held a thin blanket close to her chest, but there was no child inside it. Her eyes were red from crying. Her lips whispered a name over and over again, but no one listened. She begged in her own alien language. Her voice was weak, but full of pain. Some looked at her with disgust. Others laughed and walked away. No one cared. To them, she was just another poor mother from a ruined world. She had come from far away, escaping war and fire. She had carried her baby across space, hoping to find safety. But the moment she landed on this alien city, her child was stolen. She screamed, she ran, but they took him too fast. She had searched everywhere for help, but every door closed in her face. Now she sat in the dirt, alone. People stepped over her as if she were trash. She closed her eyes and hugged the empty blanket tight. All she had left was a promise she made to her son. I will protect you. And now she had failed. But then, footsteps stopped near her. She opened her eyes and saw boots not like the others. They were heavy, made of dark leather. The legs were tall and strong. She slowly looked up and saw a face she had never seen before. He was not from her world. He was not like the others. He was human. Jack had only come to the market to buy parts for his small ship. But something felt wrong. He heard something. No, he felt it. Pain. He turned and saw the alien woman. Her hands trembled. Her lips moved, but her voice was too soft. Still, Jack understood. He crouched down in front of her and gently asked, "Are you okay?" She didn't understand his words, but she saw his eyes. They were kind, not cold like the others. Jack pointed at the blanket and then at her. "Where is the child?" he asked. Tears ran down her face. She spoke in her own tongue, fast and desperate. Jack didn't know her language, but pain didn't need translation. She held out a small drawing, just a rough sketch on dirty paper. It was her baby, smiling with a star in his hand. Jack looked at it, then back at her. He nodded. The woman's eyes widened. For a second, hope returned to her face. She reached out and grabbed his arm, holding on as if she were drowning. Jack gently pulled her to her feet. She stumbled, but he caught her. People in the market stared. Some muttered, "Why is a human helping her?" Others shook their heads, but Jack didn't care. He helped her walk, slowly, asking questions, using hand signs. Bit by bit, he understood. Her child had been taken by black market slavers. They stole children from weak species and sold them to cruel places. She had chased them, but they disappeared into the shadows of the city. Jack's face grew hard. He had heard about those slavers. Everyone said not to get involved. They were too dangerous, too powerful. But Jack didn't believe in walking away from someone who needed help. He looked at the crying mother. She was shaking. She was weak. But still, she stood. She had not given up. And if she could fight with nothing left, then how could he do any less? He placed a hand on her shoulder and said slowly, "I will find your child." She didn't understand the words, but his voice was strong. His promise was clear. She broke down and cried again, but this time her tears were not only from pain. They were from hope. For the first time since her child was taken, someone stood beside her. In a city full of strangers, she was not alone anymore, and Jack knew this was only the beginning. The slavers would not give up the child easily, but they had made one mistake. They had taken a child from a mother, and now a human had stepped in. The vanished child. The stars above the city blinked like cold eyes, watching the silent war that had begun. Jack walked beside the alien mother through narrow metal streets and dusty alleys. Her steps were slow, but her eyes never stopped searching. She pointed to walls covered in strange markings. She whispered names. She showed him the place where her baby had vanished. Jack listened carefully, even though he couldn't understand her language. He paid attention to her face, her hands, her eyes. Every gesture told a story, and when she fell silent, he filled the space with quiet strength. A small alien child stood near a stall and stared at them. Jack stepped forward and offered a few credits, hoping for information. The child looked around nervously and then spoke in broken trade language. "They take babies. To the dark place, no return." The alien mother gasped. Jack turned to her and repeated the words slowly. Her hands flew to her mouth. Jack had never seen such terror in someone's eyes. She fell to her knees and began to pray, pressing her forehead to the ground. Jack helped her up and said one word, firm and clear: "Trust." They followed the trail deeper into the city where sunlight never reached. The ground was wet, the air thick. Posters hung on rusted walls, faces of missing ones, most of them children. A sign flashed in red above a tunnel: "No entry, private zone." The mother pulled Jack's sleeve. She pointed to the symbol on the wall. It matched the one on her blanket. Her child had been taken through here. Jack stepped forward, but two armed aliens blocked his path. One was tall and reptilian, the other short and thick-skinned. "Turn back, human," one growled. "This place is not for you." Jack didn't move. "There's a child inside. I'm going to find him." The taller alien laughed. "Many children go in. None come out." The mother behind Jack began to cry again. Her hands clenched into fists, but she could do nothing. Her body was too weak, her heart too broken. But Jack wasn't afraid. He stepped closer to the guards. "You have two choices," he said. "Let me in, or try to stop me." The shorter alien reached for his weapon. Jack didn't wait. One fast move, and the guard was flat on the ground, groaning. The other guard hesitated, then stepped aside. Inside the tunnel, everything changed. The noise of the city faded. A cold silence filled the space. Jack walked slowly, each step echoing off the metal walls. Strange smells filled the air, something between fire and blood. Then he saw it. A cage. Inside it, dozens of small children, some crying, some too weak to move. They were from different species, some with feathers, others with scales. But one cage had only one child inside. A tiny boy. His skin shimmered like silver under the dim light. His arms were wrapped around his knees. He didn't cry. He just stared at the floor. The alien mother ran to the bars, screaming her child's name. The boy looked up slowly, and for the first time, his eyes had light. But the joy didn't last. A door slammed behind them. More guards came. Heavy boots. Blasters loaded. Jack stood between them and the mother. He didn't know how many enemies there were. He didn't care. He had found the child. Now, he had to get him out. And this time, he wasn't going to fight alone. Because the alien mother, weak or not, stepped beside him, her eyes full of fire. The battle for the child was about to begin. Into the black ring, the underground world was nothing like the city above. Here, law had no meaning. The air was thick with smoke and the stink of fear. This was where the forgotten were traded, where screams were entertainment, and where the strongest ruled without mercy. Jack had stepped into the black ring, a place even criminals whispered about in fear. He walked past cages full of broken beings. Some reached out through the bars, begging in voices that had lost all hope. Others didn't move at all. They had given up long ago. But Jack didn't stop. He followed the sound of distant cheers, cheers that didn't belong in a place of pain. He entered a large arena, hidden beneath the city where blood was spilled for credits. The crowd roared above, sitting safely behind shields. In the center stood a pit. And in that pit, something terrible was coming. Jack spotted the tall, alien slaver who ran the arena. Graalvex, a creature with skin like cracked stone and eyes that glowed red. Graalvex wasn't just a boss. He was a monster who turned misery into sport. Jack stepped forward and showed him a small token, something he took from one of the guards. Graal looked down at him and laughed. "You want the child?" Graal grinned, sharp teeth shining. "Fight for him. We don't give back what we own. You want him alive? Enter the pit." The alien mother screamed in protest, but Jack held up his hand. He didn't hesitate. He nodded. "I'll fight." The crowd was confused. "A human?" Someone scoffed. "He'll be crushed." Graal grinned wider. "Good. Let the people watch. This fool die." Minutes later, Jack stood alone in the arena. The lights above made his shadow stretch far and thin. Across from him, a beast was released. It was massive, twice Jack's height, with 6 arms and tusks, like knives. It had killed before, many times. But Jack didn't flinch. He wasn't here to win glory. He was here for a child. The bell rang. The beast roared and charged. Jack dodged, barely escaping the first strike. Dust flew. The ground shook. The crowd screamed. Jack used his speed. He climbed the beast's back, punched its eye, and rolled away before its claws could grab him. But each hit from the monster brought pain. His arm throbbed. His chest burned. Blood ran down his face. Still he stood. The alien mother watched from behind the shield, her hands pressed to the glass. She had seen warriors fall in this arena, but none stood back up like the human did. Every time the beast knocked him down, Jack rose again. The audience grew quiet. What was this? He was only human. But he would not fall. Finally, Jack saw his chance. The beast charged again. Jack grabbed a broken weapon from the sand, just a sharp metal rod. At the last second, he leaped aside and drove the rod into the beast's neck. The creature screamed and crashed to the ground. Dead. The arena fell silent. Then cheers exploded. Even the cruel ones couldn't help but respect the fight. Graalvex stared, shocked. Jack stood, over the beast's body, bloodied and tired, but alive. He pointed to the cage. The child. Now. Graal had no choice. The rules of the arena were clear. Win and you take the prize. The cage was opened. The little boy ran to the alien mother and leapt into her arms. She sobbed, holding him like she would never let go again. Jack fell to his knees, not from weakness, but from relief. The first part of the battle was over, but deep in his gut, Jack knew one thing. Slavers don't forget, and this fight had only just begun. The fight for one lifeblood still dripped from Jack's arm, but his eyes never left the mother and child. The reunion was pure, untouched by the violence around them. The alien mother clutched her baby to her chest, rocking him gently, whispering in her native tongue through tears. The boy had bruises on his tiny arms, but he smiled for the first time. That smile gave Jack more strength than any medicine could. But the moment was short. Graalvex's face twisted with fury. He had been humiliated. A mere human had defeated his prized beast. Worse, he had made the crowd cheer for something real, for something good. That kind of power was dangerous in a place like this. "Kill them all," Graal growled to his guards. Jack heard it first, the heavy boots pounding against the steel walkways. A dozen armed slavers rushed forward, blasters raised. The crowd didn't move. They weren't here for justice. They were here for blood. And Graal was about to give it to them. Jack turned, body aching, and stood in front of the mother and child. "Run!" he said. She didn't understand the word, but she knew what it meant. She shook her head, refusing to leave him, but he gave her the sharpest look she had ever seen. It wasn't anger. It was a promise. He would not let her child be taken again, not while he breathed. The mother nodded slowly and darted through a side tunnel, clutching her son tight. Jack picked up a metal staff from the sand. He wasn't armed with a gun. He didn't need one. His body was bruised, his hand was bleeding. But something inside him burned hotter than fear, a human fire no one in the arena understood yet. The first guard lunged. Jack moved faster. He struck once, hard and true, and the alien dropped. Another came from behind. Jack turned just in time, slamming the metal into the guard's knee, then elbowed his jaw. More came. Too many. The crowd was screaming again, but now it wasn't for the arena beast. It was for the human. Blow after blow, Jack fought with everything he had. He wasn't trained for this kind of war. He wasn't a soldier. He was a mechanic, a drifter. But pain had taught him to survive. And now someone else's pain had taught him to fight. A blaster fired. It grazed his shoulder. He winced but didn't stop. He grabbed the weapon from the guard's hand and fired back. One alien screamed. Another dropped. He fought through smoke, through blood, through exhaustion. The mother had made it to the exit, but the door was locked. Jack saw her from across the room, banging on it, the child crying in her arms. Guards turned toward her. Jack yelled, not from fear but from rage. He threw himself into their path. One guard grabbed him, slamming him into the wall. Jack's vision blurred. But then, he remembered the boy's face, the way he had smiled, the way the mother had wept when she held him. That was enough. Jack slammed his forehead into the alien's face, breaking free. He dived for the control panel near the door and smashed it with his staff. Sparks flew, the metal doors hissed open. "Go!" he shouted. The mother stared at him, shocked, crying, and then ran through the opening with her child. Jack turned to face the remaining guards. He was alone, but that was fine. Because the child was safe, and sometimes saving just one life was worth everything, even your own. The escape. The city was on fire, not with flames but with chaos. Word spread like wind. A human defeated Graal Vex's champion. A human freed a stolen child. A human challenged the Black Ring. And lived. The alien mother ran through the lower tunnels, her baby pressed tightly to her chest. Her legs ached, her lungs burned, but she didn't stop, not even once. Behind her, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. Slavers shouted through the speaker systems in languages she didn't understand, but their meaning was clear. Find her. Kill her. Bring the child back. She had no weapons, no strength left. But she had something more powerful. Hope. And that hope had a name. Jack. Back in the arena, Jack limped through the ruins of battle. He was bleeding, his body barely holding together, but he moved with purpose. He had to reach them. He had to make sure they escaped. The tunnels were tight, confusing, full of smoke and noise. But he followed the marks he had seen earlier. Arrows scratched into the wall by the old slaves who once dreamed of freedom. Jack reached a maintenance hatch and forced it open. He dropped into a sewage channel just as two guards passed by above. His body hit the dirty water, and the cold shock brought him back to focus. He heard the child cry in the distance. He was close. Suddenly, the mother came into view, cornered in the lower levels. 3 guards blocked her path, laughing. One raised a weapon. The mother turned her back, shielding her child with her body, waiting for the end. But it didn't come. Jack came crashing from the shadows like a storm. No more warnings. No more talking. He slammed into the first guard, knocking him out cold. The second fired a shot, missed, and was met with Jack's fist before he could aim again. The third tried to run, but Jack tackled him and dragged him down. When the silence returned, the mother looked at Jack with wide eyes. She said nothing, just breathed heavily, her face full of shock and awe. Jack nodded. We're not done yet. He led them through the tunnels, kicking open doors, disabling security panels, and avoiding detection with every ounce of wit he had. But escape was never easy. When they reached the outer gate, 4 more slavers were waiting with energy nets. One threw it at the mother, but Jack dove in front, the net wrapping around him instead. He screamed as electricity burned his skin. The slavers moved in. The mother's eyes widened. But she didn't run. Instead, she did something no one expected. She fought back. With one hand holding her child, she grabbed a loose metal pipe and struck one of the guards across the face. Her body was weak, her strike clumsy, but it gave Jack the moment he needed. He broke free from the net, roaring through the pain. He wrestled the blaster from the last guard and fired once. The gate opened. They didn't wait. They ran. Out of the tunnels. Into the cold night air. For the first time since the nightmare began, the stars above looked like stars again. Not prison lights. The city was still dangerous. The slavers were still hunting. But they were free. Jack fell to his knees, gasping. The mother dropped beside him, holding his head gently. The child reached out and touched Jack's bloody hand. And Jack, bloody, broken, and exhausted, smiled. They had made it out. But deep in the city, Gralvex watched it all from a security feed. He didn't scream, he didn't speak, he just stared at Jack's face and whispered one word: human. This wasn't over. The price of mercy. The morning light touched the highest towers of the city, but its warmth never reached the streets below. Down in the shadowed alleys, news moved faster than sound. The human had survived the arena, freed a stolen child, and escaped Gralvex's hold. But even louder than the whispers of escape was the silence of those who once watched and did nothing. Jack sat with his back against a broken wall, bandages wrapped around his ribs, blood still wet on his shirt. His breath was slow. Every movement hurt. But he didn't care. The alien mother sat close, holding her child in her lap. She had tried to smile, but her hands still shook from everything she had seen. In a quiet corner of a broken world, 3 lives rested together. No words were needed, just presence. Then the silence broke. Dozens of eyes watched from the shadows. Aliens who had once walked past the crying mother. Neighbors, vendors, workers. They had seen her beg for help. They had ignored her. Now they looked at the human with something new in their faces. Not fear, not pity, shame. One old vendor stepped forward, placing food near the mother's feet. Another followed, offering water. Then clothes, a blanket. The crowd didn't speak. They only bowed their heads and slowly walked away. But someone else came too. The enforcers. Gralvex had placed a bounty on Jack's head. The price was high, high enough to tempt even the desperate. That morning, 5 armored officers entered the alley with weapons drawn. By order of Black Ring law, one said coldly, the human is under arrest. The mother stood up fast, shielding her child again. But this time, Jack didn't resist. He met her eyes with a soft nod. She understood. If he ran, they would chase her. If he stayed, maybe they would leave her alone. He got to his feet slowly, painfully, and raised his hands. I surrender, he said. They chained him and dragged him through the city. The mother cried out, running after them, but was stopped by guards. Jack didn't turn around. He didn't want her to see the pain in his face. The Black Ring's dungeon was dark and deep. Jack was thrown into a cell where screams echoed off stone walls. Gralvex appeared at the bars, smiling like a demon. You embarrassed me, Gral hissed. You humiliated the system. Jack stared at him, silent. Gral continued, voice low. You think mercy is strength? Mercy is weakness. And now, you'll die in a place no one will remember. But Gral was wrong. Because above the dungeons, something had changed. The story of the human had reached the ears of the people. Those who once turned away now spoke boldly. They shared the tale again and again. A mother's cry, a child stolen, and a human who fought not for gain, but for good. And then, the crowds began to gather. Hundreds stood outside the Black Ring shouting, "Let the human go. He saved a child. He's not a criminal, he's a hero." At the front of the crowd stood the alien mother, holding her child high for all to see. The guards tried to silence them, but more people came. The voices grew louder, and something no one expected happened. The guards lowered their weapons. One of them turned to Gral and said, "You told us humans were dangerous. You were right, but not the way you meant." Gralvex, once the king of shadows, now stood alone, because in trying to crush one act of kindness, he had sparked a fire in the hearts of thousands. A new beginning, The gates of the Black Ring had never opened for mercy before, but they did now. And when they opened, it wasn't a war machine or a military force that stepped through. It was a bleeding human, limping toward the light, surrounded by silence. Jack stumbled, each step slower than the last. His face was swollen, his clothes torn, but his eyes were still sharp, still full of the same fire that had made an empire tremble. The crowd held its breath as he walked forward unchained, and when the alien mother saw him, she ran. She didn't care about the guards or the rules. She just threw her arms around him, the child in her other arm reaching toward Jack with wide, glowing eyes. Jack smiled, barely able to lift his hand to touch the boy's cheek. "You made it," the mother whispered. Her voice shook, but her grip was strong. "No," Jack said softly. "We made it." The people watched in silence, then slowly began to cheer, not like a wild crowd, but like something sacred. They weren't just cheering for Jack, they were cheering for something they had forgotten: hope, and hope had taken the shape of a human. What followed over the next days would become legend. Jack was taken to the mother's homeworld, a place where humans had long been feared, their strength misunderstood. But when the people saw him with the child in his arms and the mother at his side, something shifted. For the first time, the alien saw a human not as a soldier, not as a threat, but as family. The mother offered Jack her home, not just as a guest, but as one of them. Her people gave him shelter, medicine, and rest. Her child, once broken by fear, now followed Jack everywhere, holding his hand, calling him by a word no one expected: Father. Jack didn't know what to say. He had come from nothing, just a drifting soul in space looking for spare parts and maybe a place to rest. But he had found something greater, a reason, a child's smile, a woman's strength, a world reborn. He stayed, not because he had no other place to go, but because he finally found where he belonged. And while Gralvex disappeared into the shadows, the people began to write songs, stories, paintings. They told of the human who stepped into darkness for a child who wasn't even his, the human who fought not for power, but for love, the human who changed everything. Jack never asked for honor, he never wanted a title, but among the stars, across space, and deep in the hearts of millions, he became a legend, not for war, not for violence, but because, in a galaxy full of silence, he listened to one mother's cry and answered.